There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He is currently on Broadway in Some Like It Hot, but in 2008, he was a swing covering Monkeys Trap, Skimbleshanks, Tugger, Alonzo on the U.S. National Tour 5 of Cats. So welcome, Ian Campayno, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is super cool.
Yeah, it's always, I think I do get a lot of, like, when I meet Broadway people and I tell them the podcast, they're like, wait, what? Like, they're usually a little confused.
Oh, when I saw the title of the podcast, I was like, this is brilliant. And then once I learned what the entire podcast was about, I was like, this is really brilliant. I was like, let's do this.
I love it. Well, let's start at the beginning. I always love to hear your introduction to seeing Cats. Like, when was the first time you saw it? Was it the 98 movie? Was it a live performance?
Oh yeah, it was the movie for sure. I had the DVD and I would watch it at home, and I actually would try and teach myself the choreography at home when I was younger.
I love it. So you were replaying the DVD over and over and over again, trying to figure out the dance.
Yeah, I already enjoyed theater at that point. And because of the way it was filmed and recorded, I mean, it really made you feel like you were on stage with the cats. And I loved it. I was obsessed. And of course, the dancing, I was just in awe of all of these amazing performers who could, dance as athletically as they did. And I was enthralled by it.
I love it. So did you have one or two that, like, the dance numbers you were trying to figure out first?
The ball.
The whole ball.
For sure. The entire thing.
I love it.
Because, that's obviously the longest number in the show. But because of the ebbs and flows of it all, I found it to be the most fascinating one to watch.
That's so interesting. I always, because, like, whenever I talk to a lot of, like, female dancers, they're always like, I was trying to learn Victoria's number, or I was trying to do this. And so it's interesting to hear that you picked the ball, where there's so much going on and so many different characters. You're trying to figure out kind of all the different dance numbers there.
Yeah, I probably wish I could have learned Victoria's, but I am not that flexible. So, so that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was curious because I thought, like, maybe it would be Mistopheles' dance number, or the turns, or maybe even like Mungo, Jerry, and Ripple Teaser type of thing.
I think I thoroughly enjoyed watching Mistopheles. I don't know that I wanted to do it. And even still to this day, if I were to ever do the show again, I would always be enamored by Mr. Mistopheles, but I don't know that I would ever want to do it.
Don't want to be. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, because it's so hard. You know what? It's one of the hardest numbers in the show, not only because he dances so much, but it's also towards the end of the show as well. So you've already done, I don't know, probably like an hour and 45 minutes of dancing your butt off. And then you've got this massive solo that everyone is looking forward to, and you just have to crush it. And it's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's interesting too, because, the thing I didn't realize, and as someone who's just a spectator at all of this, is how much dancing is happening throughout the whole thing. And then it's like, you're not getting any break, and you're doing this stuff, especially some of the, the dancers, you're on almost the entire show. You get Mungo, Jerry, Ripple Teaser, and maybe one or two other moments where you're not on stage.
Yes, and exactly what you just said. You spend the majority of the show on stage, and even when you're not currently dancing, you still need to be present. And a lot of times you're climbing all over this set as well. So and you are presenting with the physicality of a cat, which in and of itself takes effort.
Totally.
So it very physical show.
Yeah, and we'll get into this because your tour was considered, everything I read about it was that it was extremely grueling. Like, I kept saying, it was a very challenging tour as well. So we'll get to that, because you add in a grueling travel and tour into a grueling show is a lot. But I want to go back a step. before you get cast into this in 2008, when did you get to see it on stage before? Did you see any regional productions or any Broadway productions?
I don't remember seeing it on stage ever, just the DVD at home.
Okay. So that's a fascinating thing for me, because now you go in, let's talk about, you get cast in the role, and as a swing, you're covering, would you cover 4 different characters? I love hearing what you're told. Like, you don't, by seeing just the DVD, unless you listen to all the other stuff after and all the, they have all the other commemorative stuff at the end. But like, what was that rehearsal process like, to where they told you? I'm fascinated about the story arc of the cats, like not the dance numbers and the singing, all that stuff that you're going to learn, but here's how these 4 male characters, here's what you need to know about them on how to play their persona.
So the interesting thing when you are a swing in general is that you're always around in the rehearsal process, but sometimes you don't always get the one-on-one descriptions or the one-on-one explanations from the director, choreographer, whomever. Because normally in the rehearsal room, the swings are all off in the corner and you have your notebooks out, and sometimes if there's enough room, you can get up and move a little bit, but the focus is on the performing cast and making sure they know what they're doing. So a lot of the times, and I've seen it happen in most productions that I've done, like the director will say something like, oh, so-and-so, come here. And they'll have like a quick little conversation, and no one else is really privy to that conversation except for the director, choreographer, and that person. So sometimes you don't get as much information in terms of what they're saying to them. And you kind of have to, let's say, just assume certain things or just learn from whatever you are seeing the performing cast do.
Yeah, I find swings to be one of the most fascinating parts of Broadway that I didn't know nearly as much about until I started doing this, because it seems so incredibly, insanely difficult. Like, I can't fathom learning 1 track of a show and doing it every night, and to learn 4 and be going in between them potentially night after night. And I just think about the character stories, like they're so different. You're talking about Tugger to Skimbleshanks are vastly different personality types, vastly different types of like interactions you're having. And you have to change that mindset for, to your point, a 2.5 hour, 3 hour of straight dancing show. So how do you go about that when you're a swing? How do you go from, like, do you have did you prep going into a show knowing I'm going to be Tugger, so I'm going to be a little bit more arrogant this morning, and I'm going to be Skimble, and I'm going to like make my bed? Like, how did you like think about those things when you were going between these characters?
Yes, I think the first thing you do as a swing is you kind of just make sure you know what you are physically doing on stage that night. And then once you feel solidified in that, I feel like then you get to play with your characterization of who you're going on for. Because what also happens too is that, as a swing, a lot of the times you tend to forget that you can make the character your own. Yeah. To an extent, like the character is what it is, and of course you have to stay within the mold of the character. But when you watch a show over and over again, and you're watching a performer do the role over and over again, sometimes the tendency is just to mimic what they do, and sometimes you forget that you can put your own twist on it and still be within the realm of the character. So one of the worst and best parts about Cats is that you have to do the makeup. And so it, and excuse the sirens, New York City loves to just have ambulances fly and everywhere. Welcome to New York. But when you're doing the makeup for Cats, it takes, a little while. And so in the time that you're doing your makeup, I think is a good time for you to kind of get into character, because each character has their own makeup plot. So, of course, not only are you learning different tracks, but you learn 4 completely different makeup plots.
Yep.
So then that 45 minutes to an hour, however long it's going to take you to put your makeup on, is a good time to start to feel the character, like you were saying, like to start to feel a little more arrogant, and then, or a little more dorky and quirky. But then once you put the costume on, I don't know, it just feels like it kind of happens naturally with the characters. So yeah, it varies, A, with the character, and B, from night to night, like you said, depending on who you're going on for. But then as you perform a role more often, I think you then start to find who that character is for you, and then it just comes a little quicker. You don't have to think about it too much.
That's a perfect transition. I want to hear how these characters are to you, because I do think that the most interesting part to me for cats is that you get different interpretations of the backstories, because they're not really written. They're not there. It's a little bit about the relationships you play, and all those things can change. So let's go one by one. I want to hear how you would describe them, any kind of crazy theories you came up with, or anything you did in those couple years you did it to get you through the shows for that particular cat. So let's start with Monkish Trap.
I'm obsessed with Monkish Trap. I love Monkish Trap. Monkish Trap to me is the leader. You know, he is who everyone looks to for guidance, advice, for protection. He, to me, is also a huge stud, but like doesn't know it, like not arrogant about it like Tugger is. But I think what I loved most about Monkish Trap was the fact that he was the leader and the protector of the group.
Do you have any thoughts on, with Monkish Trap, of when it's his turn? Like, did you ever have any animosity towards old Deuteronomy of like, all right, get out of the way. It's fine. I'm ready to take over as the leader.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I think yes, but I think to a degree for Monkish Trap, he already had taken over. I mean, I know old Dude, he's there, but he's like, to me, it was always just like, he sat there, even as he sits there through intermission. But Monkish Trap was the active leader. Full leader. Where old Dude was like the calm sit back and
So who's making the decision? Like, who's making the call on Grizabella then? Is it Monkish Trap or is it old Deuteronomy?
Well, no. I mean, it's old Dude for sure.
Okay. So when is Monkish Trap's time to come in and decide who to murder?
When old Dude dies.
when he just passes. Okay.
When he's gone, I guess, because as long as old Deuteronomy's there, and maybe in the show, maybe it was that everyone else may have chosen someone else, but old Dude felt that it was necessary.
Okay, let's go to Tugger.
Tugger. Oh, what a fun role! You just get to be like crazy rock star on stage, and as soon as you hit the stage, you have to have give no shits. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just has to be completely arrogant. And it was funny because I covered like the older cats. Typically they tend to be taller, and I'm 5'10", so I was like on the shorter side for the older cats, or the big boys, as we called them. And it was funny because when I would put the Tugger costume on, my cast would call me Teen Heart Throb Tugger, because I was just smaller in stature in general. So I kind of always, always just took that and ran with it. And I just was like, okay, I'm like an NSYNC Tugger, or something like that. It's just some
boy band Tugger. I love it.
Yeah, some like Hanson Tugger or something.
Hanson Tugger is a very different vibe for sure.
It is a different vibe.
I love that. That's so interesting. I never thought about height into any of these characters, because they're your cats. Like, you're not
right.
Thinking much about it. The only one that really comes off is Buster Jones's weight is kind of like alluded to frequently, but that's the only type of like body sizing thing I never considered. I did see, like, we've had talked in the past of some of the Jenny Any dots have been on the younger side, and so it's like they have to maybe tweak a little bit of that on the motherly, not old when you're young 20s playing Jenny Any dots. But I never thought about height. I like Hanson Tugger, Heart Throb Tugger. That's kind of a fun way to go about it. Did you think about with Tugger the Mistopheles relationship, because that's like pretty much all the fan fiction?
To be honest, no. No, I never really thought too much into that relationship.
That's going to disappoint some fans, because that's what all the stories are about, and all the pictures
Oh, no. Well, okay.
Maybe that came after.
Well, no, tell me their stories. I'm curious, because I'm not sure. Because maybe you'll say it and I'll be like, oh yeah, I do remember hearing that.
Well, I think it really stems from that there's a little bit of singing on each of the lines, and then Misafwi's I think is very clearly gay, and Tugger seems very clearly open to anything. And so there's that, but by just having those two that way, you see a little bit of this like playful relationship on stage. And so when you take the fan fiction after and off stage, there's a lot of the two of them being a couple.
I see. I never saw it that way. If anything, it would have been more like a big brother or like a mentor, or even if the characters are seen as gay, someone who's like showing him. I don't want to say this. Someone who's, oh goodness, the words are not coming to me right now. But no, it definitely never felt like a relationship kind of thing. It was more mentory, or let me like take you under my wing and make sure you're taken care of. I love it. Personally didn't see it that way.
Well, that's what makes this fun, because I don't think there is an answer to most of this. So it's like, yes,
well, there's not.
Fans, well, yeah, a lot of fans will do it, but it's like they're also cats, so it's like there's I did see someone just sent me this week that there was Andrew Lloyd Webber was talking to Hal, the Phantom. They were talking about that, and he was saying like, hey, I got this new show, and he talked about all this stuff, and they was like, oh, here's what it means, and here's the meaning behind it, and Andrew Lloyd Webber just goes, no, it's just about cats. And so it's like, let's take back all this stuff, which is not good for me as someone who overanalyzes every aspect of this plot. But I do think it's fun. And that's one that, like, trust me, the fans have run with deeply, as those two are Bert and Ernie-ish together. Now that you have said that, I do feel like I have seen drawings and whatnot of that sort. Yeah. Oh,
I feel like
start
I
reading some fan
forgot.
fiction stories. It goes deep. It goes very deep. Let's go to Skimbleshanks.
Skimbleshanks. What like a weird, quirky guy. To play Skimbleshanks was fun, but it was also just, I don't know, strange. He was goofy and just, but also like a little OCD, you know?
Yeah.
But also has his own sense of importance to himself. Like he thinks he's very important. And he is to an extent. But to be honest, and I hope the fans don't get upset or anything, he wasn't always like my favorite one to go on for. But then once I would get to the number, I actually loved doing the number, because the imagination of the number, everything that happens around the number with building the train and whatnot, is all very fun. And even his little bits in the number are fun as well. And I think the audience enjoys the number too.
That is that's going to be a hot take, because Skimble's pretty universally loved. But
I'm not saying he's not not loved, but as a swing, as a performer, like if you were like, who would you want? Like if I got to choose who I went on for that night, he wouldn't have been like my first choice to go on for.
Yeah, I know that he's universally loved, because I also kind of ripped into him a little bit. And I know where my hatred comes from. It's because the first time I saw the show, the light of the train hit me directly in the audience. You know, they put it out in the crowd, and yes. I couldn't see for like a good couple minutes after. And I just was like, whoever that cat was, I was like, and they're singing Skimbleshanks. I'm like, Skimbleshanks, not my favorite. And then I like the second time I saw it, I was, up in the balcony, and I wasn't in a good seat. And, it didn't hit me there. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. Like, I get what the hype is about. Sure. But I've had a few people come back at me and being like, because I called him the creepy uncle. And I got a little flack for that.
But okay, but I understand where you're coming from with that description of him, because the way he is played sometimes is very much that. It's like he's a little older and just a little weird and quirky. But again, with my stature, I wasn't like tall and super thin. So I think maybe I gave it a little bit of a different life. But again, you still have to stay within that realm of characterization.
Totally. I think that's what's fun about it. What about Alonzo? There's not a ton about Alonzo besides, because I don't know if you did the Victoria dance. It's not always Alonzo. It's sometimes Corporal Cat. So that's like it's mostly just that he's a brother with Tugger and Monk is usually the story you get.
A lot. Well, yes. And Alonzo, talk about a hard track, man. He danced every dance, and then he does the shadow dance during McCavity. And so, like at the very beginning of McCavity, just when you want a break, it's like, no, here's a solo for you, and you're like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow.
But Alonzo, I don't know that I ever thought too much into it, other than just being part of the pack and having to dance a lot.
Yeah.
Just trying to make it through the show.
Totally.
We'll be back after this short break.
And as a swing, I know those are the main characters, but what other theories did your cast have any, like, here's how we're going to definitely play this kind of odd quirk between these two cats, or is there something else I feel like my job now in life is to just document all the different theories of different productions of cats. So trying to bring them all out as much as I can.
Well, obviously there's the theory that McCavity had his way with Demeter.
Yeah, that seems like a staple.
Which is what,
like that's like given to every cast.
Yeah. And then
I'll say I find that fascinating to begin with. That is the one staple, because we talk about how there's not a lot of, it's like fairly loose backstories, and it's like, well, it could be this, and you're not fully given it. And then every single cast member I've talked to is like, well, yeah, but Demeter is being abused by McCavity. It's like, that's the one for sure. And I'm like, how is this the one backstory arc that cats decided we all are going to know about? It seems like a very strange choice.
And it's so interesting too when you start to hear about all the theories and all the backstories and whatnot. I can't help but wonder if they were things that the original cast came up with to bring whatever moment to whatever heightened point it needed to be at, and then because it worked and it brought those moments physically, emotionally to where they needed to be, because it was just cats dancing on stage, that then those were the things that didn't just keep getting passed down to the next person. And it's fascinating to think about, because clearly, like you were saying earlier, when Andrew Lloyd was like, no, it's just about cats. It's like, okay, well then how do we make these emotional moments work without some kind of story oomph behind it?
I think you're 100% right. I think the logical brain in me is, yes, they were given a very, very loose interpretation and focused on the dance numbers and the singing and the staging and all the really cool stuff you get to see, and not all this backstory. And they kind of created some of it as they went. The non-logical person in me, the hope of me is like, no, I want Andrew Lloyd Webber to have like notebooks worth of backstories for each one of these cats, of like where they grew up and who their parents are and what their stories are and their dating life with the different cats growing up. Like that's the level of detail I want, but I think you're probably more accurate.
But listen, that would be absolutely brilliant. And I think people would be mind blown if that if that ended up coming out at some point ever in the future.
It sounds like there is like a book of cats at this point, but it's, to your point, I think it's more of the, okay, here's what we've kind of assumed based on the interpretations over 40 plus years, not the like, we're going to write these stories. Cause like, I can't imagine, like I definitely have added more to Buster Jones's story than there's clearly there. And so I do think that it's like, all right, how can we add some of these things to these characters that maybe no one else put any thought to?
And I also think then that makes the show even more enjoyable to the people who love the show, to like come see it and watch the relationships on stage and see if it's living up to what they've heard, or if it's going against what they heard maybe, or if maybe they're picking up on some new vibes or information that they're like, oh, but what about this? It keeps it exciting, but it also keeps it available to each new cast that goes into the show, because then they have a baseline, and then they have room to, like, you know, mess around with it slightly.
I think that's what's fun about it. There isn't really a definitive way, so it gives you as a performer some freedom to do, especially like Tugger, you really get some freedom, but you get some freedom in general to kind of to do some reactions. You get to like truly act, which I think in some shows you get to, in other shows it's like, no, it's a Disney movie. Like, it's pretty clear what the way this is supposed to go is supposed to be, or, you know, there's a lot of experiences with it. I have noticed that if you look at the theories and headcanons and some of the stuff, and I've debunked some of them on this podcast, it's because like these two are actually just really good friends off stage. And so that's why their characters now maybe seem to have a, you know, like a connection that a previous cast didn't. It's like, no, those cats maybe weren't written for connection. These two people are just really good friends. And so they're going to play, like, even if they're not intentionally doing it, they're probably unintentionally doing a little bit more of a connection just because they know each other. And that's, I think, what's really cool, is because you start getting these blurred lines of like, maybe Mistopheles and Tugger came because two of the people playing those were really good friends, and so they had good chemistry, and that's why all of a sudden people thought they were dating. And like, there's so many different ways to interpret this, not just by lyrics, dance number, staging. There's a lot of other stuff you can add into it.
Oh, for sure. And you know, the playing company, they get to do it 8 times a week. So they really develop their relationships, and then us swings, we get to come in and just throw a wrench into all of it. Like we fill our spots, and we sing our harmonies, but we can come in and give a slightly different take, which then, if everyone's doing their job and paying attention and reacting appropriately, and not just what they do 8 times a week, then they're really getting an honest opinion about the new character or a new take on a character that they're seeing.
Yeah, and there are super fans who go to see every swing and every performance and every person they can, and then only watch that track most of the time. It is the Cats fans are very loyal and good fans, and they're awesome people.
They sure are. Yeah, they sure are. The amount of times, and yeah, I toured 2008, 2009. The amount of times that people came dressed full costume, full makeup to shows, and we loved it. I mean, we loved it. We loved the fact that people enjoyed the show so much that they would come support. There were people who came, like, if we were in a city for an entire week, they would come to every show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think any show loves fans like that. You know, they love the support.
It's good to have it. I also think, like, what I've noticed over the years of Cats is that the reason it has such a strong fan base, it has a lot of haters too, which I understand too, but the fan base is strong because there's probably one cat that you relate to, if nothing else. Like, there's such a wide personality in the tribe that there's probably somebody that you can see a little bit of yourself in, and that makes it a relatable story in itself. And, you know, the other group that hates it because it's an easy punchline. And it's different, you know, but I do see there's a lot of people that can see, oh, I'm very much like a Mistopheles or a Syllabub, or like, this is my personality type. And because of that, I get to see that on stage, and it's a really cool kind of piece.
Yeah. I feel like every show's going to have some haters, but yeah. Cats, I know, does. And I feel like it's because most people go and they're like, what was that? Like, I don't get it. But if you really just kind of sit back, and even if you're not watching or looking out for storylines or whatnot, and you sit back and you look at the big picture of all of it, and you watch the athleticism that the performers have, it really is kind of fascinating and beautiful. And I don't know, it's like you said earlier, it's iconic. It's yeah.
I get the hate in the sense of, I do personally like a neat storyline, which is why I've been trying to write my own for a couple years now of what this should look like. And I get, if you go in expecting that, you don't get that. Instead, you get incredible dancing, really unique kind of like set design. You get like just an experience. But if you go in wanting a hero and a villain, and you want to have like, here's my issue, and then we get to the climax of the story, and then we have the resolution, and then we have a happy ending, you don't really get that. You get a very different version. You know, they kind of fill some of the stuff in. McCavity's a little bit of your villain, and there's a little bit of problem there, but you don't really get, I guess, happy ending is loosely interpreted there, depending on if you see Grizabella's choices positive or negative, and also if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's also hard to interpret that. Like I've seen it now twice on stage and a handful of times on the DVD and over YouTube. And it's like watching it full through, I know a lot now, and I'm still like, wait, hold on, what's going on here? Like, where's this part of this? Like, this is a story. So a casual fan is not going to pick up 95% of this.
Yeah, and it's so hard for me to even comment on that because I did it for 9 or 10 months. Yeah. So like I knew the show so well. Because it's funny when you just said that, I was like, no, but the show has all of that. But I was in the show, so I know my thought process through the show and how the arc went and everything, but I can totally see where someone who has no clue about it, this is kind of like, what just happened?
Yeah, it does feel like a trip on drugs almost. I want to talk a little bit about Some Like It Hot, because I think, we're recording this during previews. This will be released right after you open. Right. I think some people are going to know the movie, but I think a lot of people are going to go in and not know much about it. So like, tell me about the experience. What can people expect to see? Like, tell us a little about the show.
Great. So if you know the movie, definitely come see the musical, because we are giving you the same storyline this. It's essentially the movie, but it's different, slightly different takes on it. So the movie was known as the funniest movie, A, of its time, and B, I think still on a list of like the funniest movies of all time. So the musical is giving you a period piece, because we set it in 1933, so in the middle of Prohibition, and we are giving you a period piece musical, but we're giving it to you with a very current 2022 lens on it. So if you enjoyed the movie, you will 100% enjoy the musical. And if you don't know much about the movie, you are going to 100% enjoy the musical. We are giving you a big Broadway musical, big dance numbers, lots of comedy, lots of heart. And it's definitely one that I don't think people are going to want to miss.
Yeah, the movie is kind of it's a fascinating story idea. It was, Marilyn Monroe, like it was huge, absolutely humongous, but it predates me and you, and like it predates a lot of us by many years. So it's like one of those things that I'm not sure how many people are gonna. I think people will go back and hopefully watch it and see it, and then come see your show and be kind of fascinated by it, because I have seen the movie, and the movie did incredible back in the day, but it was old, so it's like, yeah, it's really funny, it's really well done. And I've heard nothing but amazing things about the production and how you have modernized it. I think is probably a good way to say, like, you take a great way to current say it, yeah. spin on a movie that's from the 50s and set in the 30s. So it's going to be really cool to see. And I'm really excited for everyone to go see it. We'll put a link in on how you can get tickets for everybody in New York and come see it, because I do think it's great. I always love asking, but it's hard to do this. I usually try to compare characters to different cats, but because I only have the movie reference, do you see any parallels to the show between Some Like It Hot and Cats?
Oh, that is a great question, and one that I didn't even think about, so give me a second. Direct parallels, I'm going to say no. Thematically, though, I'm saying you're getting some brotherly love. You're definitely getting love interest. You're definitely getting villain. This isn't character parallel, but you're definitely getting big dance numbers.
Yeah.
And you are getting stunning visuals. The set by Scott Pask, the costumes by Greg Barnes are just incredible. Lighting by Natasha Katz. All Broadway veterans who have just knocked it out of the park in terms of the visuals of this show.
Awesome.
But direct parallels, I'd have to think on that one a little harder.
It's not. There's a couple that have been really clear. Like there's a little bit of, I've found 6 to be a lot of Cats, because at least the way I envisioned it, because it's a singing competition. Everyone tells me Chorus Line is exactly like it. A little bit about a couple other ones fit it nicely, but it's not always, as much as I want to make Cats about everything, it's not always neatly fitting into for this.
But now that you say those other two, though, I see how those would be a little more paralleled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do some rapid fire here to close this out.
Oh, gosh. So, okay.
If you could play, you got to play a handful, but if you could play any cat for one night, whether you're tall enough, short enough, could do the number, can't do the number, just if you had immediately could do it, who would you want to go on for one night?
Monkish Trap.
Monk. Okay. Loved Monk every time. Who are your favorite and least favorite cats?
Oh, favorite cat? That's a hard one. I think I'd still have to go with Monk as my favorite cat. Gus is my least favorite cat.
Oh, okay, that's not good for my last question. What is your favorite song in the show?
I like The Ball. I know it's not technically it doesn't have lyrics, but the Ball musically is just one of my absolute favorites.
No, I count The Ball as part of that. I do think it's a big piece of the show. I mean, it's like 13 minutes too, right? So it's a long song. It's long. Yeah. Okay, so I have two. I always like to do two kind of fun ones, and I want to take some from Some Like It Hot. So who do you think would be the best jazz musician?
Which cat?
Which cat do you think would be the best jazz musician? And then my other one's which cat do you think would be the best mobster? But I think that one's kind of a clear answer.
The best jazz musician, I'm gonna go with, I feel like Jenny Any Dots would be the best jazz musician, just because her trio backup, those harmonies are very jazzy, and it almost feels a little reminiscent of all of our jazz music in Some Like It Hot, because Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman are brilliant, and the music's incredible. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Jenny Any Dots. I feel like she could riff it out and give you some blues notes.
Okay. And what about mobster?
I think Bustopher Jones is the obvious choice.
Yeah, that's always been my thought. I actually think he's the mobster behind McCavity's crime.
But I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Why not?
Okay. Final and most important question is, I've argued at length that I don't think Grizabella should be the Jellicle choice. I want to know if you want to defend Grizabella as your Jellicle choice, or if you would send somebody else. And since you hate Gus, I'm assuming you're not going to pick him.
No, I'm not going to pick Gus. And I have thought about this, and I actually am I think I will defend the Grizabella choice.
Okay. Give me your rationale why you're defending her.
Because I think it's more than just the fact that she is getting reborn. Because her being around, the animosity towards her, the hate towards her, by the end of the musical, I feel was something that brought the entire tribe together. Not that not all of them were together in their hate of her, especially the kittens. They didn't know that they should hate her or be afraid of her or whatnot. It was kind of like taught to them. Mm-hmm. But their naivete, and their curiosity kind of led the tribe toward her. I love the open armsness of it, of, allowing someone back into a community, whether they've wronged you or not, and forgiving them. And then hopefully in that forgiveness, and that acceptance, if when she is reborn, she will remember those traits and those things that her community and tribe gave to her, then she comes back a better cat.
I don't disagree with a lot of this. I think you said one thing that I hadn't thought about that made me kind of rethink it, though, which is that when she comes back, by the end, they kind of almost need her gone. Because my most recent argument has been that she should come back, be reaccepted into the family, and she deserves her time with her family now. It's like they made this big redemption acceptance story, and she needs time. But I kind of like what you were saying a little bit in the beginning, which is by the end of the musical, they kind of need her out of there. Like they did accept her, but they also really do need her to be done with the tribe and go on to her next thing, which I think is a very different argument than the redemption story only. Because I've argued, I definitely think if you're going to redeem her, she should spend a year with her family and make her next year's choice. But that's an interesting way to think about it. I haven't thought that angle.
I mean, I like that argument too, that she should spend a year with the family but I don't know. It was kind of just like interesting.
Well, I always say there's no right choice, but there clearly is, because for 40 plus years, there has only been one decision being made every night. It's not the one I argue for. but we're working on it. Every time I'm slowly getting there. I do think there's an opportunity on tour, and I've said this many times, that you're in one place for a week. I think you can kill a different cat every night and encourage people to come to a different show every night. And it's like, that's a little bit, a little bit more fun, a little different.
Giving you the Mystery of Edwin Drood cat style, or cat style, the Mystery of Edwin Drood style, where the audience gets to pick at night.
Everyone picks. Yeah, pick a different one. Let's
That's
vote.
Funny.
Let's let America vote.
That's funny.
The crowd vote. Make it a true singing competition. Well, this has been super fun. How can people, I'll link the show, so for everyone for something like that, but how can people keep up with you on social media and stay in touch?
Amazing. My Instagram is at ICAMPAYNO. I'm also on Twitter as well. Those are probably the easiest ways to keep up with me. And you can find me at the Schubert Theater doing Some Like It Hot.
Love it. We will link everything so everyone can go. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to see you perform in a few weeks, and I hope everybody that's in New York or near New York goes and sees the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And thanks everyone else for listening for this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.